Joining me now, Timothy Hafey, former federal prosecutor and former lead investigator to the House January 6th committee. Tim is also starting a new law firm with Jack Smith and has been a fan of Smith's work. And Tim, congratulations on that. I will have a question about that later. But let's get to the news first, because House Republicans already released video of Smith's closed-door testimony in December. What is their calculation here? Are they hoping to trip him up or change his story in a public setting, crack under pressure of the bright lights, or just show their attack dog capacity to cover whatever truths he may share and the public might believe?
It's a head scratcher, Alex. I don't really understand what the calculus is here. But then again, I've never really understood politics or political motivation. I mean, if you read the transcript of Jack's prior interview and look at that video, some of which you just showed, there's nothing good in there for President Trump or the Republicans. Quite the opposite. Jack very calmly, dispassionately recited the facts that he and his team gathered, the same facts that the process in which I was involved, the Select Committee.
Buckle up, friends. John here. This episode is stacked. Jack Smith's 165-page filing systematically dismantled Trump's presidential immunity defense, replacing months of legal arguments with a smoking crater. The case is no longer about delay or dismissal. It's moving forward, and Trump's legal team is scrambling. This filing contains new evidence that the public has never seen. New witness testimony that directly contradicts everything Trump has been claiming. New details about Trump's conduct on January 6th, about his phone usage that day, about the disturbing disconnect between what he was saying privately and what he was telling the public, about his relentless and increasingly desperate pressure campaign on Mike Pence.
Identified that this was an intentional, multi-part plan to disrupt the joint session and prevent the transfer of power. And repeating that, again, that evidence, that strong evidence again, which really has not been rebutted in any way since it was outlined by the Select Committee. I don't really understand the political benefit of that to the House Republicans.
Thus, the questions I was asking you, hoping you could explain it to me. But look, this week marked 5 years since the January 6th Capitol attack, and a new White House website attempted to rewrite history, describing rioters as peaceful and orderly, and accusing Capitol Police of escalating tensions and then downplaying the influence of Trump's rhetoric before the violence began. The landing page features a large photo of Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Does any of this narrative square with what you found in your investigation, Tim?
No, Alex, it is yet another revisionist attempt to rewrite the very difficult.
And Smith presents all of this with devastating precision. He shows that Trump wasn't acting as president on that day, but as a candidate desperate to hold on to power. He shows that Trump's actions were personal and political, not official. He shows that Trump knew what he was doing was wrong and did it anyway. And suddenly, the entire defense strategy is in jeopardy. The immunity argument that seemed so promising now looks unwinnable. The evidence that you thought could be suppressed is now public and damning. Now you have to respond. You have to file a reply brief. But you are panicking because Smith's filing is so detailed, so comprehensive, so thoroughly documented, that you don't even know where to start.
Moments of January 6th. And the more that they try to change the narrative, the less and less credibility it has. I'm sure there's a subset of people out there in America that are persuaded by this, but any rational, thoughtful person who pays attention to the facts and the evidence will see that that is a smokescreen, that is a revisionist narrative. And I think it's frankly a small minority of Americans that believe that. I think there are a lot of Americans, ironically, that believe what Jack Smith has said, what the Select Committee said, yet still voted for President Trump. That's what I don't think people realize, that a vote for him is not necessarily a rejection of the core facts about January 6th.
So a New York Times interview this week highlights President Trump's vision of the extent of his presidential power to command world affairs. And he told the paper, quote, "My own mind, that's the only thing that can stop me." Does this emanate from the Supreme Court ruling, Tim, that got him off the federal criminal charges? And does immunity actually extend to any and every decision he makes while occupying the Oval Office?
You don't know how to counter evidence this strong. You don't know how to defend conduct this clearly criminal. So you do what desperate lawyers always do. You ask for more time. You ask for more pages. You ask for any extension that might give you space to figure out a response. And everyone watching this unfold knows exactly what that desperation means. It means Smith's filing hit hard. It means Trump's legal team is reeling. It means the evidence against Trump is devastating in ways that even his most ardent defenders cannot ignore. The filing itself is a masterpiece of legal prosecution. Smith presents his case methodically, building it piece by piece, fact by fact, until the conclusion becomes unavoidable. He shows Trump's knowledge. He shows Trump's intent. He shows Trump's actions.
No, absolutely not, Alex. Look, I think that the Jack's case, the special counsel indictment with respect to the Capitol attack, would have survived and gone forward even after the Supreme Court's immunity decision. I disagree with the immunity decision, but even accepting it on its terms, there's a whole category of things that a president can do that are not pursuant to his official responsibility as president, but are rather done as a candidate for office or as a private citizen. And what happened after the immunity decision, Jack and his team went through their original indictment. They trimmed a little bit the information about the pressure on the Justice Department, the potential personnel change at the Justice Department. They pulled that out because that seemed like it was within the president's responsibilities as commander-in-chief or as chief law enforcement. But everything else remained. And the argument was, hey, just because he's president, that doesn't mean everything he does as president is official action. It can still, therefore, be criminal. I think that was a compelling argument. We never got a chance to have a judge or a jury adjudicate that, but the case would have survived, Alex.
He shows the criminal conspiracy unfolding step by step. And because this filing is public, anyone can read it. The media can report on it. Voters can see it for themselves. And that public disclosure is part of Smith's strategy. Because even if Trump avoids prosecution through delay or immunity, even if he never faces trial, the evidence is now part of the public record. The American people can see what Trump did. They can judge for themselves. They can make informed voting decisions. And that is a nightmare scenario for any politician facing re-election. The new witness testimony that Smith has uncovered is particularly damning.
And Jack Smith's lawyer reiterated his readiness to answer questions in a public hearing, but in the closed-door interview, he was also asked about Trump's retribution efforts. And here's part of what he said. Let's watch.
What do you think was his purpose for issuing this executive order?
To seek retribution against me.
Do you feel like you have a target on your back?
I believe that President Trump wants to seek retribution against me because of my role as special counsel.
Would you be surprised if President Trump directed the DOJ to indict you?
Tim, how critical is the retribution aspect, and how do you expect Republicans to bring that up while their voters are following live testimony in real time?
Yeah, it's absolutely a real thing. Jack's not speculating. You can point to Jim Comey and Tish James and people that have had the nerve to do their job and investigate credible allegations against the president have been targeted for retribution. The president's own chief of staff sort of admitted that that was a partial motivation for things that the president has done. So it's noise, Alex. It doesn't deter Jack Smith from telling the truth. As a matter of fact, it only enhances.
He cites witnesses who say Trump privately admitted that his election fraud claims were crazy, that he knew the claims were false, that he was told repeatedly by his own people that he lost, that there was no evidence of fraud sufficient to change the results. And Trump acknowledged this. He admitted privately that the claims were nuts, but he continued pushing them publicly anyway. He continued telling his supporters the election was stolen. He continued using those lies to pressure officials. And those private admissions are crucial because they prove Trump's knowledge. They prove he knew he was lying. They prove criminal intent. You cannot claim you genuinely believed the fraud claims when you privately admitted they were crazy. You cannot claim you were just exercising free speech when you knew your statements were false. You cannot claim you were pursuing legitimate remedies when you knew there was no legitimate basis for your claims. The January 6th phone evidence is new and equally significant. Smith has forensic experts ready to testify about Trump's phone activity that day, about when he was using his phone, what apps he was accessing, what he was doing while the Capitol was under attack. And apparently, that evidence shows Trump was actively using social media, was watching coverage of the riot in real time, was aware of what was happening and chose not to intervene, chose not to call off the mob, chose to let the violence continue. And that evidence of awareness and inaction is powerful. It shows Trump's conduct wasn't negligent or accidental. It was deliberate. It was Trump choosing to let the attack continue because it served his purposes, because he hoped it would prevent certification of Biden's victory. And that deliberate choice, that knowing allowance of violence, is criminal. That is using violence to obstruct official proceedings. That is exactly what Smith is alleging, and he has forensic evidence to prove it. The pressure on Mike Pence is documented in excruciating detail. Smith shows Trump telling Pence that people will think you're foolish if he doesn't reject electoral votes, that hundreds of thousands will despise you, using threats and intimidation to pressure Pence to violate his constitutional duty. And Smith has evidence that Trump knew what he was asking was illegal, has testimony that Trump said Pence was too honest for his plan. That is an admission that the plan required dishonesty, required violating the law. And Trump asked Pence to do it anyway, asked him to put loyalty to Trump above his oath to the Constitution. And Pence refused. And Trump then sicked the January 6th mob on Pence, tweeting attacks on Pence while the mob was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." All of that is documented. All of that is proven with evidence. All of that shows Trump engaged in a criminal pressure campaign, using his position and his supporters as weapons to coerce an official into committing an unconstitutional act. The immunity argument is where Smith really strikes. Trump's defense has been that everything he did was official presidential conduct, protected by immunity, and therefore cannot be prosecuted. But Smith's filing argues the opposite. Trump was acting as a candidate, not as president. He was pursuing personal political goals, not official duties. He was using campaign resources and political pressure, not presidential powers. And that distinction matters because presidential immunity protects official acts. It does not protect personal conduct. It does not protect campaign activity. It does not protect crimes committed to maintain power. So if Trump was acting as a candidate, he has no immunity. He can be prosecuted like anyone else. And Smith presents extensive evidence that Trump's post-election conduct was candidate conduct. It was about winning an election he lost. It was about personal political survival. It was not about executing presidential responsibilities. That evidence, if accepted by courts, destroys the immunity defense. It makes prosecution possible. It makes Trump vulnerable to criminal charges. Trump's legal team is scrambling. They immediately requested more time to respond. They requested more pages than normally allowed. They requested every extension possible. And those requests reveal panic. They reveal that the defense team doesn't have ready responses to Smith's evidence. They don't have effective counterarguments. They don't have a strategy for dealing with this level of documentary and testimonial proof. And their panic is justified because Smith's filing is crushing. It is comprehensive. It is exactly the kind of evidence that convinces juries, that persuades judges, that proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And responding to it effectively is nearly impossible. Because how do you respond when someone has documented your client's crimes in exhaustive detail? When they have witnesses saying your client admitted knowing his claims were false? When they have forensic evidence of your client's conduct during a violent attack? You can't respond effectively. You can only try to muddy the waters. You can only try to create confusion. You can only hope that some argument, any argument, gives you a foothold. But when evidence is this strong, when the case is this well documented, muddying the waters doesn't work. Truth breaks through. And Trump's lawyers know it. They know that Smith's filing is the kind of evidence that wins cases, that it presents a narrative so compelling, so thoroughly supported by documentation and testimony, that it will be nearly impossible to refute. They know that juries will see this evidence and understand exactly what Trump did, and that terrifies them because their entire strategy has been about avoiding trial, about keeping this evidence from ever being presented to a jury. And now that evidence is public, and there is no putting it back in the box. The timeline Smith presents is meticulous. He shows Trump being told repeatedly by his own people that he lost. Campaign officials saying there was no path to victory. Attorneys saying lawsuits were failing because there was no evidence. Advisors saying concession was necessary. And Trump rejecting all of it, deciding instead to pursue increasingly desperate strategies to pressure state officials, to organize fake electors, to pressure Pence, to incite January 6th. And each step is documented. Each decision is shown to be deliberate. Each action is proven to be part of a broader conspiracy. And that timeline is powerful because it shows progression. It shows Trump escalating. It shows each strategy failing and Trump trying something more extreme until finally he is using mob violence to try to stop certification. That escalation shows criminal intent. It shows Trump wasn't making innocent mistakes. He was deliberately pursuing criminal strategies because legitimate options had failed. The witness list is apparently extensive. Smith cites testimony from dozens of people, from Trump's own staff, from campaign officials, from government officials who were pressured, from people who participated in various schemes, and all of them paint a consistent picture. All of them describe Trump's knowledge, Trump's intent, Trump's direction, and consistency matters because Trump can't claim witnesses are lying when dozens of people tell the same story. Can't claim it's all made up when evidence corroborates testimony. Can't dismiss it as a partisan attack when witnesses include Republicans, Trump appointees, people who were loyal to him. The breadth of witness testimony makes Smith's case overwhelming, makes it impossible to dismiss or minimize. Mike Pence's testimony is particularly important because Pence was there. He was the person Trump was pressuring most directly. He was the person who could have single-handedly given Trump what he wanted. And Pence refused. According to Smith's filing, Pence told Trump it was illegal, told Trump he didn't have authority to reject electoral votes, told Trump he wouldn't do it. And Trump kept pressuring, kept insisting, kept threatening. And finally, when Pence wouldn't comply, Trump turned the mob against him, tweeted during the riot that Pence didn't have the courage, essentially told a violent mob that Pence was the enemy. And the mob responded by chanting for Pence to be hanged. And Trump did nothing to protect him, did nothing to call off the mob, let the violence continue. And Pence's account of all this, his testimony about Trump's pressure and threats, that is devastating. That is a firsthand account from someone who was central to the scheme, someone who has no reason to lie, someone whose testimony is inherently credible, and juries believe witnesses like that. The phone forensics on January 6th opened new lines of evidence. Smith apparently has detailed analysis of Trump's phone activity, knows when he was on Twitter, when he was watching TV coverage, when he was making calls, when he was just sitting there aware of what was happening, but choosing not to act. And that minute-by-minute reconstruction of Trump's conduct is important because it destroys any claim that Trump didn't know what was happening, that he wasn't aware of the violence, that he would have acted if only he'd known. The forensics show he knew, show he was paying attention, show he was actively engaging with social media while the Capitol was under attack and chose not to intervene, chose not to call off the mob, chose to let violence continue for hours. And that choice, that knowing allowance of violence, is criminal. That is using violence to obstruct an official proceeding. That is exactly what Smith needs to prove. And the forensics provide that proof. Smith's argument about candidate versus official conduct is legally sophisticated. He's not arguing Trump had no presidential powers. He's arguing Trump was using those powers for personal political purposes rather than official ones, was using his office to pursue campaign objectives, was acting to benefit himself as a candidate rather than to serve the public as president. And that distinction is crucial for immunity analysis because presidential immunity protects official acts taken in service of presidential duties. But it doesn't protect personal acts, doesn't protect campaign activity, doesn't protect crimes committed for personal benefit. So if courts accept Smith's characterization, if they agree Trump was acting as a candidate, then immunity doesn't apply. Trump can be prosecuted. And Smith provides extensive evidence supporting that characterization, shows Trump using campaign staff, shows Trump focused on election outcomes, shows Trump's stated goal was staying in power, all of which suggests candidate conduct rather than official conduct. The fake elector scheme gets detailed treatment. Smith documents how the scheme was organized, how Trump and his allies recruited people to sign false certificates, how those certificates were submitted to Congress, how the plan was to create confusion about which electors were legitimate, and how Trump knew it was fraudulent. Has evidence of Trump being told the plan was illegal, of lawyers refusing to participate because it was a crime, and Trump proceeding anyway, finding lawyers who would participate, directing the implementation, and then trying to pressure Pence to use the fake certificates. All of that is documented. All of that is proven with testimony and documents. All of it shows Trump directing a criminal conspiracy, shows Trump at the center of the scheme, shows Trump's personal involvement in fraud. The pressure on state officials is similarly well documented. The famous Georgia call where Trump pressured the Secretary of State to find exactly enough votes to win. Similar calls to officials in other states. Pressure campaigns, using the party apparatus, using threats of primary challenges, using public statements to create pressure. All of it documented. All of it showing Trump using every lever available to try to overturn results. And none of it being a legitimate challenge, none of it being a proper exercise of rights, all of it being pressure, being threats, being attempts to coerce officials into changing legitimate results. And that's criminal, that's conspiracy, that's fraud. And Smith has it all documented. Trump's public statements are used as evidence of intent. His tweets, his speeches, his statements to media, all showing Trump knew he lost, but claiming otherwise. All showing Trump deliberately spreading false information. All showing Trump inciting his supporters. And those public statements can't be defended as protected speech because they were part of a criminal conspiracy. They were in furtherance of fraud. They were designed to pressure officials and incite violence. Speech in furtherance of crime isn't protected. It isn't shielded by the First Amendment. It can be used as evidence. It can prove intent and knowledge. And Smith uses them effectively, uses Trump's own words to prove Trump's guilt. The overall structure of Smith's filing is designed to overcome every defense. It addresses immunity by showing candidate conduct. It addresses intent by showing private admissions. It addresses causation by showing direct pressure campaigns. It addresses First Amendment by showing speech in furtherance of crime. It anticipates every argument Trump's lawyers might make and preemptively counters it. And that thoroughness is what makes the filing so powerful. It is what makes it a bombshell. Because it's not just throwing allegations. It is systematically building a case, piece by piece, fact by fact, until the conclusion becomes unavoidable, until Trump's guilt becomes clear, until even sympathetic observers have to acknowledge the evidence is overwhelming. So let's break down what Jack Smith's bombshell filing means, why it's so devastating to Trump's defense, what the implications are legally and politically. Because this isn't just another court document. This is a comprehensive presentation of a criminal case. This is Smith laying out exactly how he would prove Trump's guilt at trial. And it is crushing. First, the evidence quality. Smith doesn't just have allegations. He has testimony from dozens of witnesses. He has documentary evidence. He has forensic analysis. He has Trump's own statements. And all of it is consistent. All of it points in the same direction. All of it proves Trump's criminal conduct. And that kind of evidence wins cases. It convinces juries, it persuades judges, it makes conviction likely. And Trump's lawyers know this. They know that if this case goes to trial, if this evidence gets presented to a jury, Trump likely gets convicted. So their entire strategy has been avoiding trial, pursuing immunity, seeking dismissal, trying delay. But Smith's filing makes all of that harder, makes the immunity claim less viable, makes dismissal less likely, makes delay less effective, because the evidence is now public. It is part of the record. It can't be hidden or suppressed. And the public knows what Trump did, even if a trial never happens. The immunity implications are profound. Smith's candidate versus official conduct argument is strong. It is based on solid legal analysis. His distinction is, one, courts are likely to accept because it makes sense. Campaign activity isn't official conduct. Efforts to overturn an election for personal political benefit aren't presidential duties. And if courts accept that, if they rule Trump was acting as a candidate, immunity disappears. Trump becomes prosecutable. Conviction becomes possible. And that is terrifying for Trump because criminal conviction for insurrection-related charges is politically and legally devastating. That is potential prison time. That is disqualification from office. That is the end of his political career. So immunity has been Trump's essential defense, his last line of protection. And Smith's filing attacks it effectively, might destroy it, might leave Trump completely vulnerable. The political damage is equally significant. Even if Trump never gets prosecuted, even if immunity somehow protects him, this filing damages him politically because voters can read it. They can see the evidence. They can understand what Trump did. And many voters care about democracy, care about the peaceful transfer of power, care about whether presidential candidates respect election results. And Smith's filing shows Trump didn't care about any of that, shows Trump tried to overturn a legitimate election, shows Trump incited violence, shows Trump betrayed his oath. And that matters to voters, costs Trump support, makes swing voters uncomfortable, makes independents reject him, makes even some Republicans question their loyalty. So this filing has electoral consequences. It affects Trump's ability to win. It affects down-ballot Republicans' prospects. It affects whether voters trust the Republican Party with power. The witness credibility issue is another factor. Smith's witnesses are largely Republicans, Trump appointees, people who worked for Trump, people who supported him, and they're testifying against him. Not because they're partisan opponents, but because they saw crimes. They saw Trump engaging in criminal conduct and felt a duty to report it. And those witnesses are credible. They can't be dismissed as Democratic operatives, can't be attacked as never-Trumpers. They are Trump's own people saying Trump committed crimes. And juries believe witnesses like that, believe people who testify against their own interest, believe people who have nothing to gain and much to lose by coming forward. So Smith's witness base makes his case particularly strong, particularly credible, particularly likely to result in conviction if it reaches trial. Trump's response options are limited. He can attack Smith as a partisan prosecutor, but that doesn't address the evidence, doesn't challenge the testimony, doesn't refute the documents, just deflects, just tries to change the subject. And voters see through that. Saying witch hunt is not an answer to allegations. It is desperation. Or Trump can try to discredit individual witnesses. But when you have dozens of witnesses all saying the same thing, discrediting one doesn't help. It just makes you look like you're attacking truth tellers. Or Trump can claim everything was innocent, that he genuinely believed fraud happened. But that's contradicted by evidence of private admissions, by witnesses saying Trump knew claims were false, by Trump's own acknowledgments. So Trump has no good options. He can only throw mud. He can only hope something sticks. He can only delay and deflect and distract, but he can't actually refute the evidence. This filing becomes public as campaigns heat up, as voters are paying attention, as races are being defined. It dominates news cycles, provides ammunition to Democratic candidates, gives them concrete evidence to cite when arguing Trump is unfit, gives them quotes and facts that resonate with voters. It makes it very difficult for Republicans to defend Trump. Very difficult to claim witch hunt when evidence is this extensive. Very difficult to dismiss it when witnesses are this credible. So timing amplifies the political impact, makes the filing more damaging, makes it a bigger factor in electoral outcomes. Trump's lawyers will file a response. They will try to counter Smith's arguments. They will try to minimize the evidence. They will try to preserve the immunity defense. But their job is nearly impossible. They can't refute evidence this strong, can't counter testimony this consistent, can't overcome documentation this comprehensive. So their response will be weak, will be defensive, will be largely ineffective. And courts will see that. We'll see Smith has a strong case. We'll see Trump's defenses are inadequate and will be more likely to deny immunity, more likely to allow prosecution, more likely to let the case proceed to trial. That progression toward trial is what Trump fears most, because trial means evidence gets presented publicly, means witnesses testify under oath, means a jury decides guilt. And with evidence this strong, conviction becomes likely, becomes almost inevitable. Jack Smith's 165-page filing demolishes Trump's immunity defense with overwhelming evidence, witness testimony, pressure campaigns, incitement, and proof Trump knew he lost. Trump's lawyers are panicking and scrambling for more time because they know the case is devastating and may finally lead to conviction.